Any other thoughts on how you all appoint folks, terms, all that sort of stuff? This is a conference to have that conversation. Yes, sir.
Well, yeah, and I've said this, I think both publicly and individually. I've had a number of conversations with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but I do think that we should take this fresh start to really think about our appointments and to appoint people that are really interested in the work rather than the political side of things. Quite frankly, and this is what I believe, a great deal of the appointments that were made last cycle were, quite frankly, political appointees. And we can go back and forth about, those individuals. I'm sure some of the Republicans will say that we did that. I can tell you, none of my appointees are political appointees. Matter of fact, I got some Republicans who are appointed, and I'm sure somebody will make a fuss about it. I'm sure some people make a fuss about that. But I just want us to be very genuine in appointing people that actually want to do the work instead of using those appointments to do the dirty work that we don't want to do ourselves directly. Because I feel like that's a lot of what happened last cycle. So that's the first comment that I will make, and I think, and I've said this also, the appointments that we make, in my opinion, will say a lot about our intentions, about how we feel about working with one another. Obviously, we had a big discussion about one particular appointee. We managed to work it out, but I'm paying close attention. And I'm very serious about how I feel about that. And so I just want us to be genuine and intentional about the type of people that we put on these boards and commissions.
So I want to speak to that because I had a conversation with an individual. It was not a kind conversation. I was very direct. I was forward. We are going to have to give each other grace in believing that the reason why you're appointing people is you feel that they will do the work for you. We also have to give grace to people in that we're not going to agree with everything. There are serious differences, policy differences, value differences between us. We've got to work through them, and we've got to recognize them, and we've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We've got to be comfortable that there are people who are going to challenge us in ways maybe we're not comfortable being challenged. They're going to ask questions we're not comfortable being asked. And this is what I said yesterday about having some self-awareness. Knowing what your triggers are, knowing for you what might be a situation. I am going to, with this person, who was appointed, and speaking with the supervisor believes this person is someone who's in a trust, who is someone who can give him good guidance. And again, I was less than supervisor. I was less than cheer when I spoke to this person and said, listen, this is what's at stake. Sometimes we have to give people grace and we have to, you can watch. But
He's appointed.
well, here's the point. I mean, you can still watch, but we have to also ask ourselves how much of it is them maybe versus us. And I'm not just saying for you, I'm saying for everyone. I'm saying for everyone. I don't want to beat a dead horse. The person's appointed. We'll see what happens. We'll continue to monitor, and the supervisor who makes the appointment is very well aware that the person is being watched and that credibility is on the line. I cannot stress enough, credibility is very important. If we're going to start over and we're going to not continue, the tense environment of the last administration, when we're going to give people a chance, we're not going to give them a chance. We have to give people a chance. And if we're behaving in ways and doing things that make people question our integrity, question our values, question our motives, then you lose that trust. And so this person is very well aware of it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I'll just say to that, I'm the one who started the conversation. So I'm well aware that he's aware of it, because I'm the one who started the conversation. As far as grace, he's appointed, so he has that grace. Let's be clear about that. And then also looking at them versus us, like, no need to get into that, but I will also say that it's about behaviors. It's about behaviors. It's not about policy differences. I've said that to several of you. I've said that to them directly. Go toe to toe with policy. We do that all the time. This is about behavior and character. So the people that we appoint will have the opportunity to display their character and will show their behavior and their actions on these boards and commissions. So this is not about feelings being hurt, being sensitive, whatever. Several of us can roll the best of them. This is about behavior and character. Now, this individual and many more will have the opportunity to serve and certainly will have the grace. If you get appointed to this board, that's the maximum amount of grace you can get. And so I just want to be clear about that, and that I'm just making a point generally about the people, the types of people that we put on these boards and commissions. They need to really reflect the work that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
I just want to say that we have to be careful because we've made a big deal about this one person. We're going to talk about character. I can sit here and pull lists out of some appointments that were made during the course of the last 4 years that perhaps those people should have never been appointed. But it's been a tradition of the board to honor the supervisor and who they're recommending as an appointee. I do want to say that we don't need yes men and yes women. We appoint people to these commissions and to these committees so that they can be thorough, so that they can challenge things, so that when it comes to us, we know that whatever proposal has been discussed has been fully vetted. That is the whole purpose of appointing people. So to sit here and be under this assumption that moving forward, there's not going to be some pretty animated debate, I think we would be lying to ourselves, because I don't think that that's the point of our appointees. Now I'm saying everything within reason, everything within respect, but that is the whole purpose of having people sit in these committees, commissions, to do the things that perhaps we might not have enough time to do, and then they come to us and they brief us. But I don't want to rehash or relive what's happened during the course of the last 4 years. It's a new term. I think that people have been very passionate, whether it be land use, whether it be the budget, whether it be transportation. But I don't want us to fall in this place where what Supervisor Bailey may perceive as dangerous behavior might not be dangerous to half of the board. And what actions do we take? We have to be very careful, because we don't want to set, we don't want to open that door, if I will. I will bring this up because I think it's important and it falls within this conversation. And you all know this. Twice, in the course of the previous term, I was talked about being censured. For what? And we can go back and forth. But I bring this up, but it doesn't matter. The point is that when you're going to make, those threats, you better have solid ground to stand on. Don't threaten somebody that you're going to take action when you don't have solid ground to stand on. So what I don't want is, because yesterday we were talking about if somebody is not behaving accordingly, or if somebody's doing, something that you might find offensive by my appointee or Victor's appointee, what action is this board going to take, right? And so that's what I want to caution us as a governing body is what guiding, parameters do we have to say, what, Victor, your appointee stepped out of line, therefore we're going to call, this into closed session and discuss it because action needs to be taken. Because then that can turn into, I did it to him, I'm going to do it to her. And it's going to cause a lot of problems within our board that we don't need. And so I do think that we need some sort of guidance as to how we move forward and how we can identify, those behaviors to bring together so that we can decide on something instead of sending the board 10 steps backwards, if that makes sense.
You're reading my mind.
Wait, hold on. We got
No,
Supervisor.
May I have one context before you go, Bob?
No, go ahead.
One thing that I might suggest, or at least ask the board today to consider and potentially give instruction to the county executive. I mentioned yesterday in one of our slides, I know it was a long day, that some communities, some boards do have standards of conduct for their appointees on these committees. And to address your points, I think there's some value, at least in researching that and maybe having the county executive and this team of advice for the county attorney come back to you all, and maybe some options there as well, and some equity in how people are treated and all those sorts of things. Also setting expectations for new people who may put on the boards, but also setting expectations for people who have been on boards in the past. Moving forward with this board, this is our expectation of how you're going to conduct yourselves in that business. I'm not talking about monitoring debate or minimizing conflict.
Right.
You know, we want to embrace conflict yesterday, right? We're okay with that. Conflict leads to solutions. But we want to make sure it's done in a way that makes sense. The other thing that I would suggest too, I know Prince William is a very populous county. We've got a lot of people here, a lot of great, talented people to serve on these committees. That being said, one issue a lot of localities have is, I know you talked about political appointments before, but trying to build that talent pool of people to serve on all of these committees, I think is something that every community struggles with, no matter how large or small they are. So anything you can do to, rather formally or informally as an organization, try to build that talent pool, whether it be through people going through citizens academies or those types of things, and then working your way up and tying that in, just to introduce them to local government. Again, we don't talk about this in schools, we don't talk about this in community. Unless you're in this, you don't know what opportunities are out there to serve your community. There's a lot. So I'll leave with that.
Before I leave, take this in a different direction, with respect to code of conduct and code of ethics, I've seen a bunch of them, and I refuse to sign a couple of them because they sneak in what's essentially a loyalty oath, either to the person that appointed them or to, in one particular instance, the mayor's vision. Well, I don't sign that crap.
The last thing is, in terms of our appointees, I agree with Margaret. The appointees that collectively, how it's rolled out, it's been very political. It's been very political. But as we move forward and as we grow, and as we make sure that we're getting work done for the county, we've got to look at that and see that what we do, yes, political, but what are we achieving as we serve? Because that's key for me. That's key for me in being a part, 1/8 of the body, but if we're going to do a political appointee, let it be an astute political appointee to the board. And I'm saying that going back to a conversation that Tom and I had, and the Grace, we talked about Grace, Madam Chair. We had a very in-depth conversation. And I said to my colleague, intentionality, I use that word a lot. Intentionality means a lot, but if this person is skilled and is going to bring to the table what we need brought to the table collaboratively, I get that. But you got to understand from whence we come, because you weren't here. I said that to Tom. And that was a deeper conversation. So as we go forward with appointees, we got to have those deep conversations. We can't do it in silos, and we can't do it in parties. We got to do it across. We got to be bipartisan with it. So I'm interested in doing that as we go forward and make appointments.
We want to talk about it.
First of all, I'd just say, a lot of this is kind of, we set the tone, right?
Yes.
And I'm literally looking at my schedule for next week. I'm literally meeting with almost every one of my appointees to every board and commission that we have. So I get to know them, they can get to know me. Because some of these folks, we literally had to create a list, get it submitted so that we can keep the work of the county going, but I did not have a chance to meet with all these individuals in the short time frame that we had. I do want to caution us that we don't put one person under a microscope and not realize that other people could also be acting as have bad behavior and not be looked at under a microscope. It's to put a target on someone's back. I know I've learned the history. I didn't know the history. I've learned the history. But I've had the conversations, and it's like, look, the past has got to be the past. A new day is gone. We're going to take a different approach. We're going to treat each other with respect. We're going to, as I mentioned, we've got to find forgiveness in all of this. And forgiveness does mean letting go. Doesn't mean, you know, I'm telling you I'm forgiving you, but I'm going to keep you under a microscope. You know, forgiveness is letting go. And so, but again, I believe I set the tone and tenor for the people that I appoint. And so as I sit down with them, I do have that conversation about what my priorities are as a supervisor, about how I intend to lead and grow as a supervisor, and I hope that they would follow suit. I am not trying, there's no one that I am looking at, any of your appointees that I put a right that I'm looking. And I know that there's been some of my own personal colleagues that made some statements that were very inflammatory, it upset a lot of people. Those people are still my friends. Yeah, I disagree with what was said, but he's still a friend of mine. Different party, but he and I are friends. And so, you know, the opportunity for us to go forward in a different path, I think, is something that we all have to set the tone for, both on the receiving end and on the giving end. Now, I appreciate what's been said, and I'm sorry of what was done in the past. And I am looking for good people. In fact, the spouse of the person who's been discussed today, who was also appointed to a commission, was literally out at a park last night trying to figure out why there's trespassing going on and why there's drinking happening in the park after hours. And so, you know, these are people who are getting out there doing the job, they're doing the work, and proactively trying to solve the problem within our community. So, I appreciate what was said, and I appreciate the effort that was taken, all the work that was done over the past couple of weeks in order to get to a better place than where we were in the past. And my hope is that we can continue that process going forward, and whatever hurts and pains were experienced in the past, is that there needs to be one-on-one conversations. And if you can't get to reconciliation, I'm happy to sit down and join that conversation to try to get to a better place.
Personal.
Well, I would say, as long as it's just
Two board members
and so, and again, that's where sort of a double-edged sword is we can kind of get ourselves handcuffed a little bit when we're trying to fix the relation piece of this. But nonetheless, I'm serious about that. I care about this issue, and because at the end of the day, none of us are going away, one way or the other. These people are going to still be around. So, but how do we move together better? And that's what I'm trying to get to.
I will try to keep this brief. I'll just ditto a lot of what's just been said. Understanding that there's the dichotomy between forgiveness and forgiving, obviously, right? And I think, and I will not speak before you, Tom, I just want to make sure that as we move forward with this entire conversation of appointees and bring it back to the topic at hand, that we are being intentional, and I'm going to take that from Supervisor Bailey, about what we're trying to do with these outcomes. Because I know that a concern that Supervisor Franklin brought up is it was at least perceived that some of the appointments that were made last term were folks that were frankly appointed to disrupt the very body with which they were appointed to. Whether or not that was the intent of the supervisor or not, that's what was the outcome that was perceived by the conduct, and frankly, and back to it, the decorum that we've been talking about. And I agree with Tom a lot, that a lot of that tone gets set by the supervisor that appoints these people. And I really, really want to commend you and appreciate the fact that you're willing to do that work, not only with this appointee in question, but frankly to all your appointees. And it's a conversation I've had with all my appointees too. Because I think that in the past, not with any specific supervisor, but I don't think there's a lot of that accountability, that personal accountability, that personal responsibility for what our appointees do. There was a lot of, hey, I appointed that person, whatever they do, they're going to do. And I don't think that's the right tack to take, so I appreciate that. To get back to the overall point, though, that Bob made, I know that we do have, to the point, a few different BCCs here and there that either aren't meeting regularly, they're sort of on autopilot as regards to staff, and frankly, the jobs that they have aren't ones where they should be going on autopilot. They shouldn't be ones where they just phone it in and have staff just tell them what's going on, and there's nothing to see here, let's move on. Water quality is at stake with that, for example. So I appreciate the county executive looking into that and us being able to huddle, because if there are differences, changes that we need to make as a board on the composition of those committees to make sure that they are being functional, they are fulfilling their intended purpose, I think we should be able to have those kind of conversations. The last thing I'll say about all this is that there's been a lot of conversation about activists versus technocrats versus folks that came up through populism versus folks that are sort of just good policy folks that we appoint to these commissions. And I think that there is a role in which, like a conversation we had yesterday, statesman versus representative, our district versus the county, we're at our best when we're having a good dynamic of both, frankly. And I want to commend Tom again, because he took folks that, frankly, in my opinion, had some undirected energy to the slide that was earlier, and is directing them towards specific purposes. And I think the more that we can do that with a lot of the anxiety that folks have, the stress that Madam Chair has talked about, and be able to help direct these folks in positive, productive directions, to be collaborative with them versus adversarial, I think the better off we'll be as a county. So I think as much as we can to capture that energy, to know that there are folks that frankly feel like they've been out of the process for a long time, and really capture it. Because I know that one conversation we all had, our board command 4 years ago, is that we represented folks that had never been at tables before, and we appointed them for the first time for those tables, and continue that tradition as opposed to feeling like we're battling each other out with these appointees. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I agree, and not everyone's here for me to say, and I wish people were. I have an issue. I'll be honest with you, I have an issue. Because we can all point fingers at everyone else, but people also need to look at their own behavior and what they're bringing to this. I will acknowledge, and I've said this to some people, the reason I stopped speaking at meetings after I won the general, there were a couple I wanted to speak, but it would contribute to the toxicity. It wasn't going to change anything. I know this about myself. I know, there are things that I contributed to, but we were being disingenuous if not everyone sitting up here does not acknowledge in some ways the things that they have done that have been toxic, that have contributed to toxicity, or that have undermined their credibility with on board members. And that's the one thing that is driving me crazy about our discussion, is we have people talking in circles about things, but not acknowledging their actual role in stuff. I know who I am. I know I can be petty. I know I can be mischievous. I know who I am. Not everyone has a level of self-awareness. And again, it's easier to point the finger at folks. And that's the one thing that's driving me crazy. We have these circular discussions. It's like, maybe people have, no issue with somebody on the board, but they also look at their own behavior and what they've done to undermine their own credibility.
In the same thing, I'm very aware of the law. Not really trying to let people hate and disagree with the position. I think at the end of the day, the way I have your mind is, your appointee's behavior, that hangs on your neck, not theirs.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah.
You are by extension responsible for any comments, actions, whatever they do, both publicly or in private. I do not, have not, will not, unless something particularly egregious comes up, contest anybody else's appointments. Worst, I will abstain. But there are quite a number of people currently appointed to boards that have engaged in egregious in public, not at the dais, but in public at other events, to the point where it's actually been reported in the paper. So just be aware.
I'm not sort of saying.
Okay, I'll just quick.
All right, go.
I want to say to Supervisor Vega, you said something that I had no clue about, and I apologize for that happening to you, about being central. I had no clue about that.
They were just empty
But I'm
spots,
just-
but the point remains,
Yeah.
You weren't alone.
Just, I'm just saying, we're all professionals I'm sorry you had to experience